PepsiCo just committed to recycling 80% of their processed water. Well, they can't recycle 80% of their processed water if they send it to the city. It's gone. So they have to treat it themselves so they can reuse it. Now, that's good news. Why? Because now you have more reuse. So you're getting more mileage out of the fresh water that's so precious. So 3 really good reasons why businesses should do this. Well, the first one, of course, is it gets them off the system, relieves the system, which is a big, big deal for us. Number 2, they get to reuse their water, thus reducing their incoming water costs, and it's beneficial for the water table for the rest of us. Thirdly, businesses don't like to be under the thumb of the government. And if they can just get do the little thing on the side there and not be harassed all the time, as long as they meet permitting requirements, they're happy. So they like it, and that is the trend. All right. It is Water the Blue Gold, Thursday, April 18th, 2024. And I'm happy to be with you today. We have this Water the Blue Gold and Thursday, April 18th, 2024. And it's briefing number 258. Save the planet, recycle water. That's how we roll. And here we have, of course, the usual disclosures, Safe Harbor, Regulation D, Regulation A, test the waters. Remember that we are right now testing the waters. And I'll be updating you about where that's at momentarily. And let's first get into the Twitter feed. There we go. So in case you want to know how much you need to make to stay ahead of, well, a combination of inflation and the debasement of the currency, it tells us the 12% is your hurdle to break even. So anything less, you're actually running backwards in terms of purchasing power. That's vital information, and as I see it. Okay. Tom says, hello, everyone. Hello, Tom. All right. Now, this poor over-leveraged guy, I think it was a guy, I don't know, had a terrible loss. But the reason why I posted it was because this is Crypto Nerd continuing to talk about how he's an utter failure, et cetera, et cetera. But here we go. Watcher Guru says your life is far more valuable than this 1 million. You'll make it all back and do another 10x, inshallah, for the love of your mom and for life's sake. And Shola says you lost the money, not the knowledge. Bounce back stronger. Lady of Crypto, dude, I lost everything twice, once in 2019 and then again in 2020 with the COVID crash. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I can remember. I understand how you feel because I felt it all. I felt worthless and stupid. Anyway, this is not the end of this run. It's not the end of your story. You can easily come back. Trust me, if I can do it, anybody can. So basically, we have a situation where people may lose money, and God knows I had my share of contributing to the crypto craziness. But, you got to remember that you learn and you move on. And it's very important to remember that we do reinvent ourselves. All right. Retail sales look like they're up 15.3% since March 21. But if you adjust for inflation, the real change is minus 2.2 over the last 3 years. Customers aren't buying more. They're just paying more. Doesn't it feel like that? It does. That's pretty scary. All right. And then businesses are being blamed for inflation. Actually, no. If you look at these graphs, the producer price index is the top one, the green one. It's been running way ahead of all the other consumer indexes. So, in fact, businesses have been taking it on the chin and trying to get more efficient, but they have not been able to do more than that. Here's an interesting story. High rates actually driving inflation. Why? Well, a huge part of household budgets is housing. And if you are paying high rates, like I know that my home equity line of credit, which is just a small part of my total mortgage bill, nevertheless doubled since I took it out in 2021. So I'm paying twice as much for this home equity line of credit. That's money I can't spend elsewhere. It just eats up the money. And of course, people are ending up having to charge more for rent. and so on and so forth. All right, CRE, here we go. Charge-offs for commercial real estate are happening. This is as the banks start to recognize their CRE losses. And in my opinion, this is only the beginning. We're now in the first quarter, we were at $500 billion. It's going to go onward in a pretty crazy way. Okay, now this is a really good post by Elon Musk. He says about every 5 years, we need to reorganize and streamline the company for the next phase of growth. I've talked about many times about the book Inside the Tornado by Jeffrey Moore and discuss it in detail in this other post here. It talks about you start progressing along the nose of the armadillo, which is the early. You get to strategic buyers who are buying something for a competitive reason. Then there's a chasm where you have to get your adoption. And then at the bottom of this tornado, you have a bowling, quote unquote, the bowling alley, which each pin is a bunch of vertical applications. And these start to create critical mass, and boom, tornado starts. Now, what's true about this tornado is what I realized back when I read this book is each stage of the tornado is literally a different company. And you have to, like, for example, for the super early adopters, you have to be kind of wild and zany. For the strategic buyers, you have to be very turnkey complete. For the bowling alleys, you got to be able to do vertical, go into specific industries and dominate each industry at a time. And for the tornado, you just got to just ship, and get as much market share as you can. And that's really what Elon is talking about. Reorganize and streamline the company for the next phase of growth. So that's kind of how it works. Well, there's a lot of criticism of Elon Musk for asking help from Tesla engineers to help out at Twitter. And this is a nothing burger. But what people like Fred Lambert, who is a perennial Tesla critic, don't recognize is that both Twitter or X and Tesla rely 100% on Elon Musk. If Elon Musk disappeared tomorrow, you know what would happen? It'd be just a disaster. And so let him do his thing, for God's sake, because he's only helping both companies. It's easy for people to be critics, of course. All right, oil prices. And this is interest rate. Sure, I was in oil until a couple of days ago, and then I got stopped out because I was worried that it was just going to happen, so I set stops. And, you know, I lost a couple bucks, no big deal. But the point I'm making is oil is very, very sensitive to interest rates. And again, this is what's going on, is that all these commodities are being affected by factors outside of the commodity. This is true of gold. Silver right now should be booming. There's a deficit of silver. There's less silver out there than the demand. And yet somehow it hasn't skyrocketed. It's strange. So it's good to go with a commodity that is at the beginning and that is just now coming out of government monopoly. Okay, this is an interesting story. Water wars. So what's happening in Mexico? Well, there was a 1944 treaty, which I'm guessing that treaty was not very good for Mexico. Well, then Mexico started getting big problems. I reported on that recently with their water, and they literally are running out of water. So they don't want to give the water to Texas. Now Texas is in trouble. And guess what? Neither side is recycling, which is insane to me. All right. And then let's take a look here. Again, oh, this is a really, really good post. Take a look at this. At Tesla, I thought I'd learned product engineering, managing massive programs, building highly scalable and available software systems that run the factories. In reality, what I had learned is, this is so good, to never, ever give up, never. Secondly, ability to break down complex problems into small, simple, and actionable chunks. 3, nothing is impossible unless physics say so. In other words, don't jump off a building and expect to land softly. 4, always questioning the status quo. 5, failure is always an option. Not failing means not innovating enough. And this is, I've talked about this a lot, what I call mistake-based marketing and so forth. I was giving a speech a few years ago in Silicon Valley, and there was a German there who I spoke to afterwards, and he said, you know, what you're talking about, which is failing, learning through failing, we are not allowed to do it in Germany. If you fail once in Germany, you're finished. And that's why the American market is really a global market. And finally, taking split second decisions with millions at stake. Um, I think these are, whether or not we have millions at stake in our lives, I think these are very good, important skills for us all to have. Okay. Ron Wynn says, I think Elon is focusing on XAI more than Tesla. Well, true, but let me tell you something. I'm using right now version 12, fully self-driving. It's the neural network version. They literally just jumped a whole generation from version 11 to version 12. And it uses AI, and the car is smart. It literally, Skynet became aware. What can I say? It's crazy. So I think that Elon is doing massive reorgs, by the way, of Tesla because he criticizes it for very poor distribution process and so forth. And so this is something to learn. Okay. We published an article, Time for Industry and Agriculture to Treat Their Dirty Water. So why don't I flip over to that? Eugene Tully, walk a mile in a man's shoes before you criticize him. Yes, I've been saying that to all the people who are giving me noise about this. Okay, so what's this about? Well, I think you know the story. Industry and agriculture account for 9/10 of freshwater demand in the U.S. Um, in addition, cities are being abandoned. Poorer sections of cities are being abandoned because of water infrastructure collapses. And meanwhile, the forever chemicals mandates are being demanded by the EPA, rightly so. I mean, we got to get rid of those things, but they're not funding it. It's a tiny amount of money. Decentralization is needed, and sure enough, that has happened. We must disengage business from the central systems because they're being choked to death. It's really a water independence movement. And then, of course, we talk about the things I've been saying: cheaper, recycle, and not stuck with the politics of the local water utility. And so then this tells a story about how we bought Progressive Water that does the bigger installations like the $5 million power plant they did in 2022. That was so well timed for the valuation we were seeking in 2023 for the modular water valuation and that whole merger thing going on. And then we created modular water systems, which are the drop in place pods. And finally, the capital elimination way, so that if you want to do your own water treatment, you just sign a new contract and you're on the meter with us as opposed to the city. Done. Now, we are working hard for our first pilot site that is actually going really, really fast. And in fact, I can't really get into it, but we have a client, a site, they're ready to go. We can finance it. Everything's set. And at this point, we are doing the legal work to make sure that the contracts are sane and we don't lose money, because once you get into these contracts, you have to honor them. And so that's why we are being very careful. But it's going on as fast as possible. And if we offload industry, business, and agricultural users, then perhaps one day the people will have water, maybe even free as it is in Ireland. As we've calculated, if industry recycled 15% of its water, it will double the amount of fresh water available to everyone. So that is that story that just came out today. And it's kind of, we tell it like it is, right? And that one is pinned, so you've seen this already. All right, so that is the Twitter story. And as you can see, we are moving fast in this area of implementing the water on demand pilots. And I'm going to give you some updates as well. But let me just jump back into the PowerPoint. So I'm going to run the Money Seed podcast in a minute. But first, I just wanted to go off the share and tell you that today we filed our 10K, which is our annual report. This is very, very important. Now, we were a couple days late, and the reason was that there was a need to, at the last minute, to rejigger a bunch of numbers. It's a lot of sausage making, but we got it done. And the team on our side is doing a fantastic job. So the 10K is out. Now, what does that mean? Well, number one, we've been waiting for that 10K, those annual numbers to be available to then update the S4 process. I can't discuss what's happening in the S4 process, but it was needed to update that, number one. Number two, it's needed in our crowdfunding, the Regulation A offering. And then number three, we have to report on how the company's doing. And I'm happy to report that revenues, and I'll cover this in detail on the next week's show, because we're going to do, a report on it and do the comparatives and so forth. But bottom line is that we are on trend from 2021 to 2022 to 2023. What basically happened was 2021 was roughly 4 million. 2022 was a big jump to 10. 2023 came back, but about half and half, about 6.5. So that's exactly what we need to continue to trend upwards. And frankly, that's where the modular water team is they're just such rock stars, because they have the scalable business. So I just wanted to give you that update real fast. It's, as I say, we just filed at the end of the day today, so it did not make it into the CEO briefing, but stay tuned for next week and I'll show you how it affects the forecasts. And it's a tad less than we'd hoped for. I think we were hoping for 7.3. We gave it 6.5, something like that. But it does not materially change the trend lines, and you will see that updated next week. Gene Tully is already reading the 10K. Boom. We spent a lot of time on that. In fact, because there's been so many changes and, all the repackaging of the subsidiary and so forth. And so we went through it with a fine-tooth comb to really make sure that it was clean, described the business properly, gave valid information. It's a good read, and I strongly recommend it. All right, let's take a look at this short. The water that comes out of wells, it's clean, it's fine. No, it's not, but it gets dumped. What we believe is something very, very simple. All right, here we go. Number one, let's bust the government monopoly. And that's already happening. We're not the people starting it.
Welcome back to the Money Seat Podcast. My guest today is Riggs Eckelberry. Riggs is the CEO of OriginClear, a company that's innovating in the water space. Riggs, welcome to the show.
Gabe, it's a pleasure to be on Money Seat. Thank you.
Riggs, when I first heard that you are starting a company that deals with water, or that you are innovating in the water space, I kind of did a head scratcher. I said, water, what is there to innovate in the water space? I have all these assumptions about how water works, and it's all very boring. I mean, tell me where I'm wrong, but isn't water just owned by the government? The government builds and owns these giant reservoirs, and the reservoirs have these 100-year-old pipes that take the water from the reservoir to my house. What is there to innovate? How can anyone make money? What is it that I don't understand about water?
Well, Gabe, since you're in the Bay Area, you know that there's been all kinds of issues with droughts and fires and horrible things like that. And generally, there is too much water in some places, not enough in others. And the big problem is that the water infrastructure, because of course the government is here to help you, right? The government infrastructure is completely underwater. It's the unmet demand is approaching $100 billion a year for infrastructure. It's not being met. Why? Because, again, to your point, there's not a lot of awareness. People think everything's fine. There's that sewage plant down by the river, if you live in New York City. Politicians, of course, they deal with issues that voters care about. So if the voters aren't too excited about water, not much is going to be done. For example, last week, the Biden administration traveled to Pittsburgh to inaugurate a huge clean water initiative, $6 billion, woohoo, drop in the bucket. And I use that term advisedly, of course. But the problem really is this. The original paradigm of central water treatment is a very poor one. Think of mainframes. I'm old enough to have, tried to book time on a mainframe. We're waiting in line to get access to that calculating power. PCs are seemingly less efficient because when you're not using them, they're just sitting there, but they're available for you. they serve your needs. The similar thing in water, we have the centralization where just everything gets sent to the central place, and as a result, no one gets good service. The real problem is this: 90% of all water demand is by industry and agriculture. And that is what is overburdening the system. Now, incoming clean water, water comes from places that the government should continue to control. We're not saying they, all experiments to privatize incoming water have been failures because inevitably somebody gets the idea that they want more profit and they start wrecking the water systems. It's happened in America, it's happened in the UK and elsewhere. No, what we're talking about here is the real big challenge for the government is how to treat all that dirty water. Well, why not have the people who create the dirty water clean their own dirty water and all of a sudden relieve that burden and you service people like you and me?
Okay, I got this. So if I understand correctly, what you're advocating for is don't spend all this money cleaning the water. 90% of it is going to go to agriculture, industry anyway. Let the water just come to your house, clean it on site at the point of demand, say clean it in your house. So maybe like have a device in your garage or something that will clean the water for you.
Well, but remember, this is only the 10% users, right? What we're focusing on is 90% users. We want industry, because that's, human waste is not that toxic, but industrial waste, agricultural waste, and look at the state of our rivers in America, has not improved in 5 years. It's all algae choked and so forth from all the phosphates and nitrogen. Well, that's agriculture, not cleaning its effluents and just dumping it. And industry is dumping dioxane and all these Teflon type things that I'm not going to get into. But the point is that these are really challenging pollutants, and they should be treated right at the point where they're created. Not let them just go, oh, send them over the fence. Okay, government will take care of it. Well, government doesn't take care of it. The quality of our water is decreasing badly. In California, every single aquifer is hydrocarbon contaminated. Every single one. Why? Because of lax enforcement. So we'll just, the water that comes out of wells, it's clean, it's fine. No, it's not, but it gets dumped. And so what we believe is something very, very simple. Number one, let's bust the government monopoly. And that's already happening. We're not the people starting it. But the whole idea of businesses doing their own treatment is happening. PepsiCo just committed to recycling 80% of their processed water. Well, they can't recycle 80% of their processed water if they send it to the city. It's gone. So they have to treat it themselves so they can reuse it. Now, that's good news. Why? Because now you have more reuse. So you're getting more mileage out of the fresh water that's so precious. So 3 really good reasons why businesses should do this. Well, the first one, of course, is that it gets them off the system, relieves the system, which is a big, big deal for us. Number 2 is when they're treating their own water, they have control over their own costs because water and sewage rates are rising faster than the cost of college tuition and healthcare, just taking off. So they get to control their costs, great. Thirdly, they get to reuse their water, thus reducing their incoming water costs, and it's beneficial for the water table for the rest of us. And the final point, which is the 4th point, that is kind of a soft one, but businesses don't like to be under the thumb of the government. And if they can just get do the little thing on the side there and not be harassed all the time, as long as they meet permitting requirements, they're happy. So they like it, and that is the trend. It's been going on for some time. Now it's becoming a big deal. There's unicorns showing up in the space. There were technology issues because when you're taking big equipment down to small, you have to figure out advanced compact technologies and so forth. But those have been solved. Our own company has patents in this area. So that has been solved. So it's very feasible to do your own water treatment. Now, who is doing it? It's starting with people who have to do it, the people who are being fined for not having water treatment, the people who are being, like many breweries. There was a case study in the East Bay where a brewery was making too much effluent and the city just wouldn't take it. And they had to constantly truck their effluent to another county. Well, that's stupid, right? So These people are the first wave, the people who have to have it. The next wave is the people for whom it sounds like a good idea, but they don't want to put up $500,000. And for them, we have this new thing called water as a service, which is the next wave. There we are.
Got it. So I think now it's starting to make sense. So basically, OriginClear provides an ability for companies to clean their own wastewater, as opposed to just dumping it and letting someone else deal with it.
Exactly.
I love it. So tell me a little bit more. Tell me more about the technology. I believe it has something to do with algae. Is that correct?
Well, that was okay. This is a very interesting story. It's an origin story, not to make a pun. This company, we're the 16-year overnight success. I don't know if you've heard about that, but most in overnight success is you dig under the covers and you find they've been doing it for years, and
Correct.
with lots of disasters and horrible things, and now they're sitting pretty. I can't believe how long it took. But anyway, we started as Origin Oil, and the idea was to make biofuels from algae, right? Because all petroleum used to be algae. It didn't used to be dinosaurs. There were not enough dinosaurs in the world to supply all that oil. It was algae, great, huge masses of algae that grew to absorb all that CO2 back then. There was way too much CO2 in the air. Algae eats CO2 very efficiently. And then when the CO2 levels dropped, the algae died and eventually was covered over. And, a few million years later, you've got petroleum. Okay. So we launched the company on the basis of let's do that now. Let's create fuel in the present using algae, which is a carbon neutral activity. And it was great. I was on all the top shows, back when there was mainstream media. Remember those days? Yeah.
Yes.
Fox News, all this stuff. Stuart Varney called me Algae Man. I'll call you Algae Man. And it was a lot of fun. And then the oil industry came up with fracking, which dropped the price from $120 a barrel down to 50 or less. And we looked at each other like, we can't make this work. It's overnight, algae became a science experiment, and I had a public company to run. So what we did was we pivoted into water. Our first technology was basically the same technology used to harvest algae is used to remove solids from the sewage. Okay, we did that for a while. But the problem with the water industry, as I soon found out, is that they are technology phobic. They don't want new technology for a variety of reasons, including that, public health, you might screw up. So they're very conservative. And we found out that it was way too long a path to commercialize. And that's when we started creating more of a commercial approach to the whole problem versus a technology one. One of the companies we created is called Modular Water Systems, and they create these pods, a patented system for making pods that you can deliver to a brewery or a housing development or a trailer park, drop in place, plug it in, and now it's treating water. So that's a really efficient way to solve the problem, because I may say, oh, it's great for businesses to do their own water treatment, but they don't have water treatment experts on site. So what do? You make it super simple so that literally a janitor can run it. And that's how we've done it. So we have a technology approach, but more important than that is really the commercial approach. What we did is we acquired an engineering company in 2015, which made us smart. In 2018, we created Modular Water. In 2020, we created this new thing, Water on Demand, which is a water as a service concept where you, Gabe, don't have to come up with the capital for your own in-house water treatment system. You just sign on the dotted line, you get one of our machines, and you pay by the gallon, just like you're used to. You stay on the meter, but it's our meter, not the city's. I was speaking to a reporter yesterday, and he said, oh, you're a distributed utility, which is kind of geeky, but it's kind of true, right? So the idea is to create micro utilities out there that operate just like utilities do, but for local businesses. And then we took those three companies, the engineering company, the pod company, and the water as a service company, packaged them together, and now we're in the middle of going on to the NASDAQ as part of one of these blank check companies acquiring it. And so this is our first baby. And now he's grown up and he's going off to college, and we're so happy for him. And what's great is that we are the only people in water as a service who have opened it up to regular investors. And that's the interesting part. Because if you look at, like, what are your opportunities to invest in water? You can either buy municipal bonds, you can invest in a big water company like Veolia, American Water Works, or there's some water rights things you can do. There's on the Chicago board, but not a lot. And it's too bad, because water is a huge, huge asset, and of course, essential to life. And the water services industry all by itself is $1 trillion industry worldwide. So it's big business. So how come you and I can't invest in it? And the truth is that people are already doing water as a service, but it's being funded entirely by private equity funds or venture capitalists. We decided to attract regular investors into these funds to pay for these machines that end up going on site to service these customers on a paper gallon basis, and they get residuals, just like those oil wells that people like to invest in, but it's water. That was a really cool interview. It gave me a chance to actually kind of work my way through what, kind of our origin story. That was a lame pun, but I had to make it. And so it gave us a lot of good orientation for people. All right. Oh, before I go on, Bob Roos asks, will it be possible for grandparents to invest in the new unaccredited offering for their grandchildren? Absolutely. But I also want to point out that it's possible for a grandparent to invest as an accredited investor and assign their shares to the grandchildren. So you can do either of those. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this is the actual presentation that I'm going to run through. So, and it's pretty short, but it'll give you sort of the what our high level story is. We have not yet received the video from the LD Micro conference people. They had 80 companies that they're editing for, but we expect to get that any day now. Meanwhile, let me go ahead and play this for you. What's interesting about this is that I was able to take a report that Ken and I built back in 2021, and it required minimal updating. That was what was super interesting. Our water on demand business model has been stable since 2021. As you may recall, 2020 to 2021, that was extremely developmental. We went through a phase called investor water for those of you who are OriginClear watchers. And that was where investors invested directly in the actual water equipment, which was good for them. But the problem is that there's a patchwork of regulations state by state about asset ownership. And we moved to the water on demand model, which is like the master limited partnerships. In other words, a basket of properties. And that's what we have today. Anyway, here it is updated for 2024. So obviously, water's in crisis. We know that water-related diseases are 80% of all illnesses and deaths in the developing world. Think about it. 8 out of 10 of all illnesses and deaths in the third world come from water-related diseases. That's ridiculous. Every day, 6,000 children die of water-related diseases. 80% of sewage worldwide is released untreated. Even more important, the U.S. recycles less than 1% of the water it uses. Okay, water safety. Here's an interesting stat. 2.4 billion people do not have decent sanitation on this planet. In fact, 4.5 billion do not have safely treated sanitation. That's 60% of the population. So there's a big, 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 big market opportunity. Conclusion, water is the most pressing infrastructure problem in the world today. Are we any better? Well, we do have drinking water, but look at that incredible number of 77 million people get water from 1/3 of the U.S. community water systems. And so people served by systems in violation is pretty intense. So, and unfortunately, it's really all over the U.S. And this is that interesting story about COVID, where we had people moving out to the country, And unfortunately, rural communities have their own private Flint. They are not equipped to do that. And so you have a big problem with virus spreading and all that stuff. Well, and also the septic tanks, right? And that is a very important factor in public health. All right, no fix in sight. As you know, this is back in 2016, but it basically predicted what is happening now. We are approaching $100 billion a year investment gap, unmet needs. And every year, and you know what happens, it doesn't take long for it to turn into $1 trillion, right? And now there's runaway inflation. Now, why is it important that we have runaway inflation? Here's why. Because it defeats infrastructure projects. Multi-year building programs need price stability. You can't keep up with a runaway train. Solution, very simple. Local action to treat sewage. And that is the solution in this diagram. You see all the treatment of the water at the point of use, resulting in a smaller central plant needed. Or we can just stay with the plants we have and not have to put $100 billion a year that we don't have into them. We just go ahead and delegate water treatment to the people who are making it dirty. It seems simple to me. Okay. And sure enough, because there's rapid water rate inflation, this also creates incentives for treatment and recycling. Businesses can treat their own water, recycle their treated water, and operate independently of utilities, and that is the holy grail. Here's who's doing it. This is the existing modular water business. You've seen all the videos. And now, potential for acceleration with capital elimination. I'm doing a whole rhyming thing here, I guess. The trend is to put everything on a subscription plan these days. But here's the difference. With our easy in and out systems, we can repossess. And that makes it more like a rental as opposed to a long-term lease. Anybody can lease, but that doesn't solve the problem, because a lot of companies are not able to, well, many details, but here's the bottom line. It's essentially a rental model that is based on usage. Now, I have to say that below a certain size, you don't go to pay per gallon because it's too small. You just have a flat fee. So the pay per gallon, the metered gallonage thing, happens at a certain size upward. So for example, our Texas pilot that we're building, that we're putting together here with mobile home parks, treats them all the same with a monthly fee. And the site that we're looking at implementing is 2 5,000 gallon per day Avera skid systems. Those are the ones that above ground, the containers. They simply pay a flat fee, which is easy for the homeowners association to handle. Now, it's not a flat fee. It's not a fee that stays the same because there'll be inflation built in, but it is not usage based. And we think this is a really good place to start, not to have the complexity. But remember, as I'm about to show you, we have a secret weapon. First of all, of course, as you know, there's this merger to end up on the NASDAQ. Secondly, Kevin Harrington and his team came on board for the role that they're taking on, and they're already making incredible things happen. And then we have, here we go, environment maintenance. We partner with them to make that commercial pilot program. And as you know, we also have the one with Clear. And that's the secret sauce that I described last week, where they provide the network operation. And so basically we come back to the CEO briefing which is what you're in right now, right? All right. So that was the presentation that we made at LD Micro, and simple and I think effective also. And with that, I have a bright idea. Why don't we bring on the OriginClear managers and have some fun?
It's interesting today on the briefing. I really enjoyed some of the early bits, at least in terms of, the learnings from working at Tesla and the things you thought you'd learn versus the things you actually learned. It's a very similar experience that I can relate to very deeply at this moment in time. Whereas taking on the role that I have, there's things that I know how to do, and then there's things that I need to grow how to do. And so much of that is mistake-based marketing, right? We literally just, hey, we're going to try this. That did not work. We're okay, moving forward in this direction. But it's
as long as it's not a total train wreck, you take the one little piece that worked and you go, okay, we're going to work with that kernel and we're just going to keep adding to it. Right.
And thus far, again, results, and we keep doing better and better every week. And it's an awesome thing to be a part of. But I just really enjoyed that other piece. But the thing that I just can't let slide is I love how blunt the interviewer for Money Seed was, right? What do you mean water? What, like, there's just stuff and the water comes to my house and everything's fine. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what everyone thinks and no one understands. And it's so refreshing to have that level of honesty to where it's just like, what do you mean you are innovating in water? It already works, doesn't it? Right, guys, it works.
I think he was playing. I think he was playing the devil's advocate there, and
Sure.
kind of, and 5-6 years ago when I started this journey, I mean that really was what I got. Now there's this massive awakening that's happened about water quality. Some of the disasters, the train disaster, and all this other stuff. I think COVID created an enlightenment that things aren't what they seem. So that's also good. I will say happily, I'm no longer having to go, no, you don't understand. There really is. Like, that was the conversation. No, what are you talking about? I flush my toilet, the poop goes away. Great. You've got it all figured out. Have a great day. No, but, I'm getting, I asked a woman today in the medical field. She's a respiratory therapist, and, she's not like an environmental scientist. I said, what made you call me today? Why do you want to invest? And she said, because it's water. And there's literally nothing more important in the world. And I went, there you go. Right. And that is now becoming the prevailing attitude of the world as a whole, but specifically folks that are now, of course, if they're calling us, I think they recognize that water's a problem. But years ago, it literally, they would ask me, what's wrong with water?
And the famous thing, where does the water come from?
Where does the water? Well, they still do that. It's just like, so you didn't look at anything I sent you then, right? Okay, let me start from the beginning. But the awareness that has now occurred is stunning, and I also owe, I think, some debt of gratitude to cryptocurrency, because I used to say decentralized, and people go, what? What's that?
Now it's Web3, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
James Nee says fracking is what has accelerated all the Earth problems. Well, it's true, but here's the issue. The previous administrations, many administrations, I'm not talking about just one, kept the price of oil high for many years artificially to encourage investment in renewables. This is why we launched our business. But guess what? Exxon has scientists too. They were like, oh, $120 a barrel. I think we'll invent ways. And this guy Mitchell invented the technology, and it just blew up. It probably might not have happened if the oil prices had not been guided to stay high. And this is what we keep saying about commodity prices, is that they're constantly being manipulated. And we have got to steer clear. I'm done. Right now I'm all cash. I'm like, I got stopped out of everything. And I'm like, fine, no problem.
Boy, can you pick them. All right. So
I know, I think I should think gold, oil, a Bitcoin ETF. Sounded
Right.
good, right?
Well, this is why I reverted to golf course condos in Florida, because I said, even I can't lose money on those. And it turns out I actually can.
Well, but you have a decently priced mortgage.
I do. I mean, I bought them on the way up, but the point is that the rental market in Florida now is getting saturated. The short-term rental market is saturated. So, I rent it.
Don't worry, because all the mortgage holders are being foreclosed on, and
they'll need a place. Yeah, good to know.
Oh.
And that's actually, it's not. I was I was looking at something where on a more detailed end of what you were talking about inflation is on its way down. No, it's not. The rate at which it's going up has slowed, but the price of vital goods from 3 years ago are up as much as 40%. I think it's 20 for food. Like if you say, look, eggs, milk, things like, it's like 30%. Now, for those of us in this environment, we're accredited people, we're affluent, we're blessed. It doesn't affect us. It's annoying. It's annoying. But if you're a single mom, or if you're a married couple with 3 kids
And
making,
student loan
58 grand a year, right? Yeah. How are you going to do that?
Yeah.
And so us blowing into the mobile home park market, I view that as the final place for folks to own their residence before. I mean, after that, and it's actually it's cheaper than rent. But after that, it's being homeless.
Living in a car.
It's not an accident. Cardone's putting $2.6 billion into that space. There's billions and billions of dollars of mobile home park space that are locked. You can't remember what happened to the lady that we serviced that unit for. She had to sell half her property just to be able to buy one. That was when, boom, it was that moment. Oh my God, right? But think about this. She couldn't refinance or sell until she solved. It was dead money.
Yeah.
Dead money. Think about the billions of dollars of prime real estate that's currently inaccessible.
Yep.
So Cardone, absolutely, he's smart guy. He's got absolutely the right idea of entering this market now. As the economy gets worse, these properties become more and more lucrative, and we can play a major role in unlocking that monetization that's frozen right now because of being out of compliance.
Right.
Yes, so that's a beautiful space, and what's interesting also for an investor is, the people who own the mobile homes, they don't own the land, right? They just have a mobile home, and the owner of the mobile home park is the actual landowner, and then people have their units and they can sell their units. It's a sort of a hybrid model, almost like cooperatives in New York City, right? Where you don't actually own it, but you're selling some component. Also, by the way, 90% of all real estate in Hawaii is like that. There's very little. It's
land ownership.
Well, the land is still owned by the Bishop family and a couple others who own everything.
And Zuckerberg.
I don't know about Hawaii because the Bishop family has stayed on top of.
Really, I know. I was told that he owns a very large plot on Maui.
Well, let's not get into Maui, please. We will be here all night. Anyway, so just to talk about where things are at, we're continuing to do extremely well on the marketing side. And there is I'm having a show recorded with Kevin Harrington, myself, on the 24th, I believe it is.
23rd.
23rd, thank you. My wife's birthday.
Yeah, don't show up on the 24th.
Well, 23rd is my wife's birthday, so I'm not going to that show. That's it. Just not doing it. I got my priorities straight.
All right, let me go.
Thanks, honey.
Let me go on Delta. Hang on.
No, she's a school teacher, so she's not celebrating her birthday on her birthday. Not at all. Right. Not happening. Anyway, so marketing's going great. All the regulation stuff's moving along. Nothing to report. Can't even talk about it, but it's
nothing to report, even if there was.
That's right.
But
anyway,
I tell you, I have to kill you. Right.
Let me put it this way. I've been working on a lot of things this week related to certain things that we're not going to talk about.
What you have been doing is building a killer Regulation A portal, which will be used immediately for the Invitational, and then we hope to file that Regulation A.
No, that is beautiful. He did a beautiful job.
And it'll be approved, we think, pretty fast, because the 2023 one we did with Castle under modular water was approved fast. This is under OriginClear, but still I think that it'll just be in and out, no comments, That's been the rule of thumb. So I think we are cooking along here. I'm really grateful for how the team is just clicking. Prasad is building his finance team. AJ is building his marketing mafia. Ken is putting more tough guys in charge.
Corp dev.
Yeah. And Gene Tully says, my sister's making a good living flipping houses in Hawaii. Well, I'll tell you, there's markets where flipping is working. I'm not so sure it's working everywhere. Florida, as Ken pointed out, is turning in, is on a downturn both for retail house sales as well as the rental market. But that's only because it's been so hot. So with that, unless we, and James Nee, hydrogen is key and happening around the world, but America lags. Honda today announced a much more efficient fuel cell engine. Well, it's true. There's only one problem with hydrogen is that because today it is made with fossil fuels. And so just as electrical vehicles run off of fossil fuels.
And if I understand, it actually takes more energy to break the molecule than you get from the breaking of the molecule.
Right. That's physics. But
there's a lot of really interesting in these alternative fuels markets. But my chief concern is the most obvious one, right? Is especially as Americans, we are very used to having a certain type of freedom that is largely associated with having a vehicle and being able to go anywhere. And the problem that is still not solved well, in my opinion, in the electric market, because the grid has limitations, charging takes a certain amount of time. It's not as simple as just going in and filling up and leaving. You have to wait, and sometimes you have to wait in lines, and all of these things happen when you sacrifice the gas for an alternative fuel source. And hydrogen is a much more interesting idea that has more of an equivalence in terms of procedure, but the availability and the scalability is so difficult and is such an even larger hill to climb than even electric does. So the reality of this situation is that all of these techs are still a far ways off from being able to be viable at the scale they need to be to have mass adoption in the way that you would expect.
At some point, someone's going to figure it out because there's an unbelievable monetary reward for doing so, and technology does find a way to, if it makes sense. And I believe I think hydrogen actually has a bigger long-term life expectancy than electric for numerous reasons. Here's the good news, guys. Every single one of the applications we just talked about needs a massive amount of water.
Thank you. Back to the topic of the day.
Whether you like potatoes, tomatoes, or tomatoes, it all requires water. Okay?
That's what we call the layup, ladies and gentlemen.
By being that was a that was a 2-foot putt. Thank you. But the regardless of what technological advancements lead to new types of energy, virtually all of them will be requiring massive amounts of water and massive amounts of reuse. And we've placed ourselves in the heart of that storm, which is very exciting.
Okay, Ron Williams has a question, which I want to address again because this comes up. He says, a question that keeps popping up in my mind when you say companies can stop using local water. Doesn't everyone, to include industry, I have to rely on municipalities for incoming water? Yes, we are, in this recording that I just showed, we are advocates for using the government's clean water. We're talking about the hard work, treating the dirty water, which is, by the way, what sickens people all over the world. It's not clean water that's making people, children in India die. It's the dirty water. And so that's really our task here, is to pull away the overload of dirty water treatment from municipalities, and they can keep doing their job with the clean water. I hope that's clear.
And they'll probably do a far better job because they won't be dealing with 1,000 different contaminants.
Well, and Ron, we've talked about this before, but this is a really, really, really important point, right? One of the biggest challenges at having all of the water treated in one place is the fact that there are so many different contaminants that are unique to whoever is polluting. And it is wholly untenable for a centralized facility to be able to filter out absolutely everything. Whereas when we decentralize and we take our units, we specialize the filtration to take out the harmful contaminants for that specific location, which means that the effluent water, the water coming out of the unit, is now far safer and able to be returned back to the water supply so that nature can continue to clean and to make it usable again. And the municipalities, as they process it, don't have to take so much Herculean steps to try and remove very specific contaminants from water, right? And that can't, like, that's one of those things, if you really think about these processes and the real benefits to point of pollution processing, and outside of all of the economies of scale around downsizing and doing all of the stuff and the recycling pieces of it, think about it as a full system, which exactly speaks to your point. Water comes in and then it has to go out and it has to go somewhere. And if the only place we have is a central treatment facility, then now think about whatever's in your local area, right? You're getting your municipal waste, right, from all of your humans. You're getting whatever's around you. In Pittsburgh, right, for a long time that was steel plants. It's
fracking now.
It's still lots of fracking now around Pittsburgh. There's all kinds of stuff around me that I can think of that have unique challenges. Lots of machine shops and all kinds of different stuff that processes water. Even your local auto repair shops, right? That they're flushing oil down the tubes. They're not supposed to, but they are, right? There's a whole bunch of different things. I mean, I may have used to work for one who tried to do their best, but you know what? Stuff happens. But
yeah, oops. I tipped over, boss. But
right.
here's a story that illustrates it. There was a brewery in the East Bay of San Francisco, and they're having a terrible problem because the municipality was refusing their effluent and forcing them to truck it to another county. Now, here's the ironic part. Beer effluent is one of the easiest to treat of all effluents.
Right. It's organic.
It doesn't, and plus it doesn't even have a sanitation issue, right?
Right.
It's pretty clean. But because there's so much of it, it got mingled for the municipality. It was part of everything. So it was the same thing as the local pharmaceutical or chip fab or whatever. It was all the same problem, right? And so because of the volume, even though it was a nothing job to clean, whereas that brewery now, because this is a success story of our competitor, Cambrian, they got a unit from Cambrian, boom, they're on their own, everything's fine. And they're able to recycle that water, and 50% of a brewery's water can be recycled without even making beer from it. So
Right.
with that,
I just had one more point, because you're talking about that human issue again, Ron, where it's like, how does this ultimately improve the system? The reason I think that we talk about these mobile home parks, and it's such an exciting thing, not just from the investment perspective, but when you think about the actual waste treatment systems, a lot of people don't know a lot of these systems are passive ponds or septic, right? Which leak, seep, all kinds of toxins and awful things into the ground around them, making the ground itself literally toxic, right? For the people living there. So when you're able to take a system like we have and put it on site and be able to actually treat water in these passive ponds to make them clean and to be able to process that waste properly, you're increasing not just the sanitation of the area around them, but you're actually increasing the health and well-being of the people living at these parks.
Absolutely.
And that's something you can't, again, with all of the COVID and all of the other things that have been going around, we've been a lot more health conscious lately. That's one of those things that may not be a third world country, but you know what, you might be surprised on how bad some of these places can be with these types of problems, right? Especially with the aging infrastructure and them failing. So think about those things too, and the impact that we can make in those ways.
26 million septic tanks, and many of them leak. All right. Well, we're out of time. Thank you all. Fill out your Zoom survey, please. We love to read them. We read them with great care. And of course, speak to Ken if you're interested in getting to know more about what the heck's going on. With that, I'm going to thank everyone. And Ron Williams, I think, is on the same page with us now. So you schooled him, AJ. No understand. We love you, Ron. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who attended. We had a great crew tonight. See you next week, and I will report on the revenue trends.
Good night, guys.
That should be fun.
Hi, everybody.
different. Peace out.